Hey everybody, so last night was round one of the 2018 NHL Draft. Rounds 2 through 7 are going on today, right now. But I live streamed during round one. Not a ton of people watched, but it was still fun to do. And, I thought it was a pretty interesting draft. Despite the lack of trades would have made it a lot more exciting. But I think the picks were really interesting. There were a few people that really fell. Some others, some real off the board picks by teams, especially later in the first round. Overall, I think it was an interesting night. And now I am going to pick two winners and two losers from the first round of the NHL Draft. And the first winner is the Buffalo Sabres. Now, it was really hard for them to screw this up. We all knew who they were going to take from the moment they got the first overall pick. But it's still a huge win for them, despite we all knew who it was going to be. First overall, they take Rasmus Dahlin, Swedish defenseman. And this is a major win for the Buffalo Sabres. They're obviously a rebuilding team. They were the worst team in the league last year. But Dahlin is a generational defenseman. He is somebody who is expected to be an elite NHL defenseman in the future. And for Buffalo, a team that hasn't really been good in a while, and a team that is really struggling to get back into playoff contention. This is a massive win for them, a huge pick. Now they have Jack Eichel up front, the elite forward talent. They've added Rasmus Dahlin, the elite defenseman talent. Now it's you have these great young players. Now it's time to fill in around them with good supporting players, and it's time to find a goaltender. Goaltending and defense has been the two biggest issues with Buffalo over the last few years. They have not had a franchise goalie in a long time, since Ryan Miller, and they've struggled on defense. And they have some young defensemen like Rasmus Ristolainen and Jake McCabe, but they haven't turned into the stars that they were hoping that they would. Dahlin is going to be a superstar, and that is what they needed on the back end. So this is a huge boost for them and really sets them up nicely for the future with Eichel up front and Dahlin on the back end. Now they need to find a franchise goaltender, whether that's through trade, free agency, or future drafts, although that if they were going to draft their franchise goaltender, that is certainly a down the road move. This is a team that needs to get better, like starting next season. So I would be looking for a goaltender if I were the Buffalo Sabres, somebody on the trade market that you can bring in, and even if they're not an elite level NHL goalie, someone who can be a valuable starter and someone who can be a serviceable starter. Someone who is not Robin Lehner, who they have already said they're going to let go, and that's a good move on their part, I believe. Robin Lehner is not a starting NHL goalie. So Buffalo needs to figure that out, and they need to help these young players keep improving and getting better, and they will be on the right track if they can do that. But Dahlin is obviously a huge boost for them. The second winner, I'm going to go with the Detroit Red Wings. The Detroit Red Wings had two picks in the first round, and they got guys at both picks that should not have been on the board at the time that they were picked. At number 6, they got Filip Zadina, who was expected to be a top 5 pick. He is somebody who can immediately step into the NHL and play there next season. He's an elite goal scorer. He's got great skill, great hands. Somebody who is probably going to make the Red Wings next year. And you put him with the likes of Dylan Larkin and Anthony Mantha, and you have yourself a heck of a first line there in Detroit now. He's going to score a lot of goals in the NHL in his career. probably starting next season. And I don't think he should have been available at 6, but he was. And now the Red Wings got a real huge win there by getting him in that 6th position. And he is somebody who is going to be very good for a long time in the NHL. The Red Wings picked again much later in the draft at 30, which was originally the Vegas Golden Knights pick, but they traded it to Detroit in the Thomas Tatar deal. And the biggest fall in the entire first round, the Red Wings got Joe Veleno, the center, at number 30. Veleno was projected to go 14th. He was a 14th ranked player. He wasn't supposed to be even close to available at 30. He wasn't even supposed to be available at 20. But he fell really, really far in this draft, and the Red Wings took him when they had the chance. They were probably as shocked as anybody that he was still available that late. The issue with Veleno is that he lacks the potential for high-end offensive output. He's much more of a two-way center, defensive-minded, probably only going to be a third-line center in the NHL. But depth down the middle is so important, and your third-line center is not a position just to throw away. And it might, a lot of teams look for first-line talent in the first round, but if you can get a solid third-line center who can be that for 15 years in the league, and that's not something that you pass on. And I am really surprised that so many teams passed on Joe Veleno, given how important center depth is in this league. And somehow he was still available at 30, and the Red Wings got him there. And that is another huge win for them. So the Red Wings had a fantastic first round. They have got to be happy coming out of this draft, with what they've got. Zadina 6 overall, and then Veleno 30th overall. Those are 2 steals of picks, and guys that are going to help the Red Wings much sooner rather than later. As for losers, I would say the biggest losers are teams that didn't have a first-round draft pick, and there were 7 of them, I believe. None of them were able to trade back into the first round. No major deals got done at all in the first round. So I forget. I can't. Let's see if I can name all 7 off the top of my head who didn't have first round picks. Nashville, Winnipeg were 2. Boston, Vegas. There's 4. Trying to think who else didn't have first round picks. They were, for the most part, they were all good teams, and they were teams that traded their first round picks away to, mostly at the trade deadline, to get better players and make a Stanley Cup run. Calgary didn't have a first round pick. They weren't a good team last year, but they gave the Islanders their picks for Travis Hamonic. So there's 5 out of the 7. But they're losers because they didn't get a first round pick, and whatever move they made to lose that first round pick didn't help them win the Stanley Cup, because the Washington Capitals won the Stanley Cup and they picked in the first round 31st overall. Boston traded for Rick Nash. He wasn't good for them at all. Didn't get them to the Cup. So whatever moves that were made were not good enough, and now those teams were left without a first round draft pick, and they missed out on some quality players that were taken. And also there were some very good players left at the beginning of the second round that, had these teams had a first round pick, they could have had the choice to take. So my first loser is all 7 teams that didn't have a first round pick, because they missed out on making their team better in the future for short-term success, and they did not get enough short-term success because they didn't win the Cup this year. Tampa Bay, there's 6 out of the 7. Tampa Bay is another team without a first-round pick. Obviously, that went to the Rangers. So that's my first loser, and now I'm scrolling through the draft results here from the first round. My second loser, oh boy, the Montreal Canadiens. How they had the 3rd overall pick. How do you possibly screw that up? And rather than taking the best player available, rather than taking someone who is a virtual lock to be a great NHL player, they went to try and fill an immediate need. They reached for a center, and they made a very risky draft pick. They drafted center Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Finnish center, 3rd overall, with guys like Brady Tkachuk, Philip Zadina, Quinn Hughes, Adam Boquist, all on the board, Ethan Bouchard, Oliver Wahlstrom, all those guys were left on the board, and they reached for a center who was not supposed to go this high. A center who seems to be more of a two-way center, have limited offensive upside, which is interesting because Joe Veleno fell from 14th to 30th because of lack of offensive upside, but the Canadiens took this Finnish kid, and he's considered a two-way center who's probably not going to have elite offensive output. So I don't know what they were thinking there, especially with the talent left on the board. But they obviously did not want to take the best player available. They wanted to fill a positional need. That is never a good idea in the draft, I don't think. I think my philosophy with drafting is always take the best available player. There's certainly positions that you target, and if it's kind of a wash between a few players, then you take the position that you need. But with Brady Tkachuk still on the board, even though he's a winger, they could have easily taken him. He went to the Senators with the next pick. Philip Zadina, like I said, elite scoring winger. He fell to 6th. They didn't take him. They didn't take any of either, Boquist or Hughes on the back end, who are, great offensive defensemen. Montreal is a mess defensively. They could have used one of them, but they reached for this center, and I think that it's going to come back and bite them. If he ends up being a career 3rd-line center, that's just not good enough with a 3rd overall pick. If you have a top 10 pick, you really need a high-quality player there. And I don't know that this kid is going to become that. He certainly could, but this certainly seems like a high-risk, high-reward pick. Very much a stretch. So that makes Montreal a loser to me. So, 2 winners in the draft are Buffalo, obviously getting Dahlin 1st overall, and Detroit getting 2 very quality players who slipped and should not have still been available when Detroit picked them. And the 2 losers are all 7 teams that did not have a 1st-round draft pick, and the Montreal Canadiens for making a big stretch pick at 3 when they could have had a almost sure thing with their 3rd overall pick, and they didn't take it. They made a stretch risk pick instead just to fill a positional need. I think that was a bad move from Montreal, and with Marc Bergevin as GM, we should be expecting bad moves across the board from Montreal. So who could be surprised by that? So those are my 2 winners and 2 big winners and 2 big losers from the NHL draft. 1st round, only the 1st round. 2nd and subsequent rounds are going on right now as I'm recording this. But thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Follow on social media. Check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are in the description below. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you all so much again for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you guys soon.